another episode of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, episode number 189, being recorded on Saturday, November 15th, 2025, on a chilly morning. I'm looking at the little temperature gauge I bought, and it says it is 61 in here with a humidity of 38. So I got my slippers on right now. I got a tattered long sleeve on, which has been through thick and thin, still together, although I am a little concerned sometimes when I put my arms through the sleeves that it's going to rip one of these days. But it's comforting, it's warm, the pajama pants are on, and we're going to talk about some films. Anyways, I hope you guys are all doing well, though. Like I said, with these days getting a lot colder and the holidays coming up, there's just so much to look forward to. It's great to, stay in, get some reading done, get some writing done, films to be watched. It was just a great feeling, just sitting on the couch. Had a record on, getting some reading done. The candles were lit, smelled great in the room. It is an experience you really, you can't put a dollar sign on. If you're there and you're in it and you're at that kind of cozy feeling, that kind of cozy mentality, and you're just combining it all together in that moment, even if you don't even realize it. It's just priceless, man. It's just great. And we're getting a lot of great films this time of the year. We're going to talk about some new releases. And, we're going to see a lot of lists of people talking about their favorite films of the year. I always like looking for the lists of just like films that were underseen or maybe underappreciated. That was a lot of fun last year. At the end of last year, I was trying to watch sort of some odds and ends of, I'd seen like, the big stuff, the big films people were talking about, like with the Oscar season and stuff. But, looking at like lists and stuff and seeing like films, whatever 15, 20, 30 films you may have missed. And a lot of them I'd seen, a lot of them I hadn't. But it was just so great going through them because it's almost like I kind of want to make a separate list of just films that were not like my favorites of the year and that wouldn't be on a list like that. But I figure but it's still worth kind of in the conversation. It's funny because I'm thinking recently I had seen the new film Christie, starring Sydney Sweeney and Ben Foster. I thought was a terrific film. It's definitely one of my favorites of the year. Just a really good drama that unfortunately kind of came and went. I know it didn't do too well financially, but just a really good drama. And I was thinking back to earlier this year, and I had seen another Sydney Sweeney film, Americana, which wouldn't end up on like one of my favorites of the year list, but it was one that again kind of came and went, and I was like, man, I really did like that film too. It's like a good kind of crime film. It's got a good cast, and you got like Paul Walter Hauser. You have this one actor, it's like Native American actor who has been in like a bunch of stuff, and I always forget his name, and I don't have a list right here, but that's like a film that I'd want to like mention in the conversation where it's like, no, it's not one of my favorites of the year, but it's still a solid movie, a solid film that I think people are kind of sleeping on. So that could be an idea. Because even last year, looking at finding films like Bob Byington's new film, Lousy Carter, which ended up making, my 50 favorites of the year. But that was one that I wasn't even aware it came out. And I was just like, man, this is just such a well-written and funny film that I really didn't hear any talk about. And, and then coming across that film and kind of realizing how much of a fan I was of Bob Byington's work. I had seen a couple of his films before then. And then I kind of went through his filmography. I don't think I've seen all of his films, but I've seen at least most of them. And I was just like, man, it took me until seeing his newest film at the time to realize how much of a fan I was of his work. So that's why it's always great. So keep an eye on those lists. You're going to see a lot of the same films kind of popping up, a lot of the critically acclaimed films that'll make a lot of the same kind of lists and conversations and all that. So dig a little deeper, look at publications, look at letterbox lists, kind of fine-tune it to your taste of what you'll be into, what you're not into. I have some acquaintances who are really into horror films, so they like to find like the obscure kind of stuff that or like the smaller kind of films that don't get theatrical releases and then get talked about and stuff. So find your taste. Look out for those lists, and if you see something that's worth mentioning, pass it along. Just really kind of get the word out there about these films where you're like, man, you got to see this film. This is really worth seeking out and going for. So let's talk about some new films, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I want to mention a new film I just saw, the latest Palme d'Or winner, which I'm going to get a list up right here, so give me one moment. The newest film from Jafar Panahi, which is his film It Was Just an Accident. And I was thinking, I think I've talked about, since I've started the show, I've talked about, in one context or another, the last couple Palme d'Or winners. I talked about, not separately on its own, but Anora, which was nominated for Best Picture and ended up winning not only Best Picture, but also the Palme d'Or, of course, one of only a couple of films to do that. But then I talked about Anatomy of a Fall as part of the Best Picture kind of conversation as well, and then Triangle of Sadness. So I'm looking here, and it's been quite a while since there was a Palme d'Or winner that I outright didn't like. I haven't seen all of them. I've seen the last handful. Where it ends for me is I, Daniel Blake, which is one that I do want to make a point of seeing because I'm such a fan of Ken Loach, but that's one of his that I haven't seen. But I'm looking at films here like, the past 15 years, and I like, to a certain extent, all these films. Uncle Boonmee, Who Can Recall His Past Lives, which I've talked about in the show, The Tree of Life, Amour, Blue is the Warmest Color. I haven't seen Winter Sleep or Deepan, so I can't speak for those two, or I, Daniel Blake. Actually, funnily enough, those 3 consecutive, but The Square I liked, and Shoplifters, Parasite, of course, also won Best Picture, Titan, which I thought was great, and then, of course, the last couple. So I'll be brief about this, but I did just want to mention this because I seem to always end up talking about it, and I wonder if it'll be nominated for Best Picture or not. But the newest film from Jafar Panahi, I got that name mixed up. I have only seen his last film, which was No Bears, which came out, I think, last year or 2 years ago, and I remember feeling a disconnect to that film. It felt like something was lost in translation for me. I think I was having kind of trouble. It's a very political film, and Jafar Panahi is a very renowned filmmaker, and you can look up the whole story about what the release of that film and him getting in trouble and all this stuff. So I definitely felt like some context was missing for me, but that was one that a lot of people like. But his newest film, It Was Just an Accident, is one that is really, really exceptional. It's one where it's not even that it's like the less said the better, but it's more about, the plot is there, but it's so focused on the characters and their interactions that I think they're trying to sell it as at least the trailers that I was seeing at the cinema, they were trying to sell it as a thriller when it's more of a character kind of drama, basically. And I'm reading this thing here. It says made without filming permission from the Iranian authorities. So this is an Iranian film. I think it says countries Iran, France, and Luxembourg. So I don't know if that's a co-production or not. And they're speaking Persian. But anyways, and I also may not be able to pronounce a lot of the actors' names. I'm not gonna try and mess it up. So whatever. But either way, excuse me. We have the main character here. Actually, let me get the IMDb up right here. Bear with me for just a moment. I am horribly unprepared. But, of course, get that up here. Bear with me for a second, guys. I could just pause it, but I'm not going to. I just want to make sure I get the actors' names correct. But we have the lead actor in this, and actually, I am going to have to pause it because IMDb is not cooperating. Okay, so we have this character. I think his name was Vahid. And also the actor's name is Vahid Mobaseri. I know I said I was going to try to pronounce the names, but that's the one I will do. Anyways, he one day sees somebody who may or may not be from his past. Somebody who I don't want to give too much away because a lot of the information is fully revealed. Somebody who really wronged him, who just is just a real. When you learn about what's going on here, you're like, man, that is wild. But anyways, ends up kidnapping the guy and wants him to confess about what he's done, who he is, and the guy is adamant. He is saying, "I am not this guy. You have the wrong guy. I can give you, I can give you proof this is not me." And then from there, it becomes a bigger kind of spiral where other characters start getting involved. Vahid's own uncertainty kind of complicates the situation because he wants revenge on somebody who wronged him, but he can't even be fully sure that it is, and he was wondering how far to go with it. And that is the plot there. I mean, we learn more about it, but it's far more about the characters in this film, and it's not quite the thriller that I think the trailer is making it out to be. It's a really, really great film. It's one of my favorite films I've seen this year, and I just love the characters in this, and I love the different personalities because he's trying to go to these different people, and he says, "I need sort of this validation. I need more." I need to know. Matter of fact, I have this guy, but then the complication is that if it's not this guy, then you just kidnapped an innocent guy. But then if it is this guy, then what do you do from there? It's a revenge film, so to speak, but it's not in the way that you would expect. It's a revenge film in the way of kind of emotional revenge. These characters who have dealt with possibly this guy, possibly not, and their own backgrounds and experiences, and their different personalities too. We have like a woman who's getting married, and the husband, or the fiance, I should say, he doesn't really know what's going on. He's the most outside on all of this, but she is like, man, I don't know if it's this guy. We got to see what's going on here. And we have this one actor. And I do apologize, I don't know his name, because also on IMDb that there's no pictures on there, so I do apologize. But this one actor I thought was really exceptional in the film. He's very, he is, they have to when they first see him, he's getting really aggressive, he's getting really passionate. And he was really wronged by this guy, and him as a character is sort of like a wrecking ball. Like when he comes through, you have to restrain him because he's just so heightened, and he's just so angry. And he has one scene in particular which the film does a lot. They will linger on the actors for a bit and have these good kind of dialogue, back and forth. These conversations. But he has one where he's talking about he's like, let me just take care of it. I'm gonna kill this guy. This is he is very passionate about it, and once he's in the situation, he's really the one who is adamant about just outright just getting this guy and killing this guy. And a lot of the film is, in part, if it's him, if it's not. There's a lot of ambiguity with the film, but there's also a lot of lighter moments, funnily enough. There are a couple of light moments of maybe not outright comedy, but it's not quite as dour as a film as it could be, especially given how dark when you learn about what's going on. And the third act especially, and there's one long sequence in the third act where the camera is basically stationary and we go back and forth with these characters. I thought was just so well done. And the ending as well, where it actually ends, I was just like, man, that's the perfect way to end this film. It was reminding me a lot of Death and the Maiden, the Polanski film from, I'm trying to remember what year that was, 94, which is one that I don't think is often brought up. And that one stars, that's a almost like a contained sort of film where you have Sigourney Weaver and her husband Stuart Wilson. They're at this isolated sort of house. It's kind of like a cabin and all that. And this guy shows up. I can't remember if he was in a car accident or something happened where this guy, played by Ben Kingsley, shows up, and Sigourney Weaver is convinced that he is someone from her past who has really greatly wronged her and abused her. And that film as well it leans more into the ambiguity of, is Ben Kingsley this guy, or is she mistaken, and the complications of that. That's one of, I think, Polanski's strongest films, especially from the 90s. It's one that I don't know if it was adapted from something or not, because it does kind of feel like a play in the way that it's so, just these three characters in this cabin. But that's one that, when I'm watching this film, just that ambiguity of, is it him, is it not? That was really just, it's on one hand, yes, you are sitting there trying, you want to find out if it is this guy or not, but at the same time, I was just enjoying being with these characters so much, and it's just it's such a smart film. It's one where it doesn't go in the way that you would expect it to, and the third act as well, I just really like some of the character decisions that are made where it's not a cliche, and I'm just imagining the same idea with a lesser filmmaker and a lesser, I almost said a lesser writer. It's not, because Jafar Panahi is a writer-director on this, and I'm just imagining a much more cliche version of this. But this was just so well put together. This is actually probably my favorite Palme d'Or winner in a while. I'm trying to think what's the last one, maybe since Titane, because I really I thought Titane was great. And, I Triangle of Sadness I like a lot, Anatomy of a Fall I like a lot. Honor is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of that film, but it is good. I think Sean Baker's a very talented filmmaker. But this is one that, of these past couple, I when the credits came up, I was just man, that is. I was sitting there and I was just like, man, that is one of the best films I've seen this year. So I don't think I need to really put a lot of eyes on it. I mean, again, it's Palme D'or Winner. I imagine it'll either be nominated for Best Picture or it'll be, I would say, definitely nominated and most likely will win Best Foreign Language Film. But still, just a really, really smartly written, really smartly written, mature, just great character film. It's one that I think if it leaned more into the ambiguity of whether or not it was or wasn't him, that might hinder a rewatch because when you know certain things going into it, it might hinder that. But I think the characters are so good in this that it would warrant rewatch. It's just being with these people. They all have distinct perspectives and ways of dealing with the situation. It was great seeing some of the characters kind of change. You have the one woman who's a photographer, and she is at a moral kind of standstill because she doesn't want to. She's a pacifist. She doesn't want to use violence. But then, if it is this person, she doesn't really know how to deal with herself, and especially where it goes to in the second half, it's sort of like a cog in the wrench, or a wrench in the cog. What's the expression? I may have just made that up, or messed that up entirely. And where it goes to, where it's kind of lightly comedic, but then it's also like, man, this is going to just complicate things, and even more. It's just one of these great films where I'm sitting there, I'm just so engaged with it, and I'm just so into the dynamics of these characters that when I realized it was wrapping up, I was just like, oh man, I didn't realize I was sitting here for however long. I think the movie's about like an hour 40, or some odd. So it's worth mentioning. Because it doesn't overstay its welcome, it gets right into it, and it's just completely engaging. So one of my favorites of the year, it was just an accident, one of my favorite Palme d'Or winners in a while, because even before Titan, there's a couple there that, I'd say I like more than others, but this is one that I just really got a lot out of walking out of the cinema. And I guess I'll also briefly talk about, because last time I talked about Nouvelle Vague, and I had mentioned that I was going to see Richard Linklater's other film that he had released this year, Blue Moon, and I'll briefly talk about this because this will probably get some talk around the Academy season. This is directed by Richard Linklater, written by Robert Kaplow, which is a name I am not familiar with, but he wrote the novel Me and Orson Welles, which was adapted into a film also by Richard Linklater, funnily enough. This is his first credited screenplay. And Me and Orson Welles is actually a good Linklater film. It's one I don't really hear brought up a lot. It's good cast. They have I think it's D'Onofrio in that, or not D'Onofrio. He played Welles and Ed Wood. I forgot who played Welles in that film. Either way, it doesn't matter. Blue Moon. I want to mention this. I'll talk about this briefly. Ethan Hawke stars in the film Lorenz Hart, and it was it's at the opening night of Oklahoma, famous musical. He is at this bar with the bartender, played by Bobby Cannavale, who's just great in the film. He's one of my favorite actors working. He's so charismatic and enjoyable in this. And when this first started out, I was a little bit worried because I often am critical of films that take place at in the 30s, 40s, 50s, where people feel the need to make themselves caricatures and make it so broad and big, like they're in a 40s film. I remember when Maestro came out, that was one of the biggest problems I had with that film in the first half, was that everybody was trying to be Cary Grant, and everybody was playing it up to the point where it was nauseating, and I think the film got better in the second half, but when I see films that are set at a certain period and everybody's trying to act like that, it's so dishonest and it's so dumb, and this film doesn't do that at all. But it's the opening night of Oklahoma. Lorenz Hart, he used to work with, where is the actor? Richard Rodgers, of course, turned into the duo-ship of Rodgers and Hammerstein. He is, Oklahoma is getting good reviews. People are loving it. Lorenz Hart is not happy. He doesn't like Oklahoma. And there is a bitterness there, but he's somebody who, he'll say one thing and then he will, go there and he will almost overcompensate for not wanting to seem like he didn't like it. So he will just constantly be saying, like, this will be one of the most revered musicals. Your name will be, people will remember you. It's this sort of, like I said, it's this overcompensation of wanting to be positive. Sorry about that. There was a momentary pause. I don't know if it cut up on the microphone or not, but I spilled a beverage, so I had to pause it there. But what I was talking about before is he is a complex character. He is presumably an alcoholic, at least from what we see in the film. He's drinking a lot, and he is navigating the different lives of these people around. He is very lively, and he comes off as somebody who could be a downer in one hand, but also maybe even like the life of the party in another. And the film is anchored by Ethan Hawke, and it's just one of the best performances of the year. I'm already a fan of Ethan Hawke as an actor. I think he's great, and it's funny actually having just seen him, excuse me, having just seen him in Black Phone 2, where he's mostly covered up in that, and he is a side character in that film. I had seen these two films so close together, and just different kinds of performances, and he is just so charismatic in the film. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't at least nominated for Best Actor in this. To me, it's like I'm trying to think of recent films. This is one of like my favorite performances of the year. I mean, it's sort of like I'm trying to think of a performance right now that I think I got more out of in of recent memory. I got to look at my list. I could be missing something, but just the way he goes around the bar with these long kind of conversations, and it's not showy either. He's not playing it up. Linklater is very formal in his directing in this. I was kind of a lesser filmmaker, I imagine, would be very showy, where they're like, okay, we're in one location, so we have to compensate by having these like big kind of sweeping camera movements of like running around the room and these long takes and just like these big, which is impressive in its own right, but then kind of distracts away from the character stuff, the smaller kind of character stuff. But his interactions, his complicated feelings about Rodgers and Hammerstein are sort of like, and on one hand, wanting to be happy for Oklahoma, but also maybe there is that bitterness there where he's like, the first thing he does, the first thing that Rodgers does without me is their biggest success, which I should also say, Richard Rodgers played by Andrew Scott in this, who you remember from stuff like All of Us Strangers, and I saw a trailer for him at something coming soon. Oh, I think he's going to be in the new Knives Out. I think I saw him in the trailer for that. But he's great in the film. They have just some really terrific back and forth. There's like a part where you can tell that he really kind of wants out of this friendship, but Rodgers still cares for him. But it's a thing where he's just he's getting in his own way, really. And he is complicating his friendships. He's complicating relationships and stuff. He has a really good long sequence with Margaret Qualley's character, Elizabeth. And the whole point of that, I thought, is such a great centerpiece of the film. When I say centerpiece, I mean like in the literal middle. I mean like she's telling a story about a guy that she knew in college and was infatuated with, and that kind of is a great metaphor for what is going on in the film here with Lorenz Hart's character. This is a film that I just seen Nouvelle Vague, so I was already kind of riding this high off of a new Linklater film, because I love Nouvelle Vague. I thought it was such a warm blanket of a film, such an inspiring and such a funny and such just a loving film. But the fact that he not only makes this film, and it's one of the best films of the year, and I think it's one of his very best in his filmography. When the credits came up and everything was said and done, it was just that great feeling that I don't get too often, where even with It Was Just an Accident, when that was done, I was like, man, that was just a great film. But it's this enthusiastic sort of ending. But I don't mean it's like a happy ending, because they talk about sort of like what happened after the fact. Lorenz Hart, he did. They tell you at the beginning that he died pretty young. So it's not like you're like, oh, I'm happy to But it's just sort of like, man, that is just one of the best written films I've seen this year. And I have to give just such credit to, Linklater's direction and Robert Capella's screenplay. It's one that, when it was done, I'm like, man, I could easily see myself watching it again. I just love being with these people. And Ethan Hawke is so magnetizing in this film that with a lesser actor, I keep saying that this episode, with a lesser director, with a lesser actor. I gotta stop saying that, because we don't have a lesser, actor in this. We don't have a lesser director, right? We have great talent across the board. But just being with him in these settings and his funny little anecdotes and his overcompensating and saying, I have all these great ideas, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and everyone being like, all right, yeah, whatever. So he's just wonderful in the film. I think right now he would, if I'm trying to think of like recent films I've seen, because he's got my vote in terms of my favorite male performance of, I guess would be like the Oscar kind of batch of films that have come out recently. I've seen some good performances lately, but he was the one where I'm like, man, I could just watch like 5 hours of this guy. He's so good in the film. He's so, and I'm talking like a lead performance too. I don't mean, because even actually, funnily enough, I was at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned Christie, and Ben Foster, I think, is really good in that film. He's so menacing in that film. But right now, I think maybe, I don't know. I guess I could maybe think of a couple, but nothing on that par. It's funny enough, actually, speaking of actors, I didn't get an opportunity to this episode because time is running out. But I do want to talk next time, if I remember, about two of Josh O'Connor's films that I've released this year, The History of Sound and The Mastermind, two of my favorites of the year, definitely, which I'll talk about next time, and how much of a fan I've become of Josh O'Connor's work. I think he's a really exceptional actor. Actually, funnily enough, I think he's in the new Knives Out as well. That'll be seen. I'm looking forward to that as well. As I think I talked about Glass Onion on the show when it came out, but I really like that film. Very fun mystery, and this looks like a lot of fun. I try to avoid trailers, try not to watch them, but sometimes you're at the cinema, you just catch them, and that's just life. I'm not gonna wait out in the hallway and be like, when's the movie starting? But sometimes you see them and it's like whatever, nothing to do about it. Well, nothing. You could do something, but I'm not. Whatever. You see the trailer, but that looks good. It looks fun. I'll see that in a couple weeks. Yeah, there's still a couple big films to see for the rest of the year. So we'll talk about those in due time. I also do want to mention, which I'm probably not going to really talk about, but in terms of really good performances, actually 2 films with great leading performances. I won't go too in depth about it because I may talk about it at some point, but I will mention Frank Delane in the film Urchin, which I will try to talk about at some point, maybe on the year-end list. That was a film that I haven't been hearing people talk about, but boy, oh boy, that's one of the best ones I've seen this year. And actually a film that is not getting very good reviews, but I really liked a lot, which was Ballad of a Small Player, the new film from Edward Berger. And Colin Farrell's performance in that I thought was exceptional as well. So there's been good stuff lately, of course. But no, Ethan Hawke's great in the film. It's like I said, like what I'm saying with It Was Just an Accident, just such a mature, such a well-written, such an enjoyable film. When this was done, I was just like, man, Linklater really just made 2 of his best films back to back, and made 2 of the best films of the year. So keep an eye on that. Nouvelle Vague, I should say, is on. I don't know if it's on Netflix now, but it's a Netflix film, so keep an eye on that. As for Blue Moon, I don't know of its availability now outside of a theatrical release, but I imagine it'll be available fairly soon. Unless you're listening to this in the future and you can easily stream it or buy it or whatever, then go for it. But I want to make a point of that. 2 great films I've seen this year. It Was Just an Accident and Blue Moon. Keep an eye on them. Both are, when I talk about just great, mature films for adults, this is kind of the stuff that I mean. It's just like I'm getting something really out of it. And I'm not putting down any other kinds of films like that. I'm not saying like these films are better because they're more mature, they're more adult. I'm just saying for myself, because there's been a lot of good big kind of mainstream theatrical films this year I've seen that are a lot of fun. I think of even stuff like I'll talk about the new Final Destination. I thought it's like one of my favorites of the year. It was a lot of fun, but when I look at films like like It Was Just an Accident, like Blue Moon, I just get more out of it myself. And plenty more films to talk about, but I am running out of time, so I'm going to end that right here. You guys, it is chilly. 62 now in here, so it's going to be a perfect time to layer up, get the work done, just get the job done, man. It's a really great time right now to being truly focused on your art and on your craft. But that'll be it for this episode. I appreciate you guys listening. The episode was a little late. I do apologize, but if you're listening to this in the future, it doesn't really matter. So that's all I got to say.